Hello, it's day 5 of the Godmother of Pharmacology on tour, and today I started out in Aarhus in Denmark. So Aarhus is the second biggest city in Denmark and is known as the City of Smiles. They've got quite a health conscious nature in Aarhus, and what they found is in the last 15 years or so they've had a tripling of the number of type 2 diabetes diagnoses amongst the residents. So there's a lot of work being done into working out why that is. And that seemed like a sensible topic for today's video. I'm currently on the MS Neurona ferry through to the Faroe Islands. So I thought I'd come on and do a slightly longer video today talking about the risks of type 2 diabetes. So we know that obviously if you're eating lots of sugar and lots of carbohydrates that your risk of type 2 diabetes increases, but it's actually not that simple. There are a number of other causes of type 2 diabetes over and above the food that you eat. So for example, if you're a female, as you get older, the changes in hormones as you reach perimenopause and menopause, the shift in estrogen and progesterone levels actually mean that your cells become less sensitive to insulin, and it's much harder for the glucose that's in your bloodstream to enter the cells for the body to use. So it's really important if you're in that perimenopause or menopausal phase that you do everything that you can to balance your blood sugar as much as you can. And of course that does mean eating a much more balanced diet. So if you make sure that you're always eating plenty of proteins and fats compared to carbohydrates, that can really make a difference. So it's really important to look at the composition of your meals. A really important point to note is that skipping meals is also equally a problem. So if you're not eating first thing in the morning, the body generates a stress response, and what that does is that mobilizes the liver to make more glucose from this glycogen that you have stored in the body. Unfortunately, it overproduces that glucose, which then means that the body produces lots of insulin in response to get that glucose back into the cells. And then you start with what we refer to commonly as the blood sugar roller coaster. So essentially, your blood sugar is being brought up by cortisol, the stress hormone, and then it's being dropped by insulin. And this is very much the way in which it continues for the day. One of the things that I always say is how you start the day is how you finish. So if you start your day with well-balanced blood sugar, you often have a much better chance of balancing your blood sugar as the day goes on. Other things that you can do apart from making sure that you have 3 well-balanced, well-spaced meals is actually exercise. So going for a walk after eating a meal helps to mobilize that glucose into the cell for the body to use for energy. But a really important part of exercise is to make sure that you're doing some resistance exercise and building muscle. Muscle is really, really important for insulin sensitivity. So if you can do some light weights or do a circuit, I for example, do an over 50 circuit class, and that's made a massive difference to my own blood sugar regulation, especially as I've hit that menopausal phase. Stress has a huge impact on blood sugar regulation because stress mobilizes glucose from the liver to enable us to run away when we're in danger. Managing your stress levels is really, really important. And obviously not eating is very much a stress, but actually having some relaxation time, doing some yoga, spending time out in nature can also be really important for helping to balance those blood sugar levels. And of course, there are many ways that you can see that your blood sugar regulation is becoming a problem. Oftentimes we'll start with increased thirst. We'll often have to urinate quite a lot, particularly overnight. So if you find that you're waking up 2 or 3 times in the evening while you're in bed to go for a wee, that's often a good sign that your blood sugar is dysregulated. So essentially what the body is doing is it's getting rid of that excess sugar via the kidneys in your urine. And sometimes you can actually notice that your urine has become quite sticky. So if you're noticing a sticky, sweetly smell, then that's usually a sign that there's an issue there with your blood sugar, and you need to be looking at that going forwards. Oftentimes I find people that have poorly balanced blood sugar really find it difficult to sleep. So a key sign that your blood sugar regulation is not where it needs to be is if you get maybe 3-4 hours worth of sleep and then you wake up. And oftentimes people think that they're waking up because they actually need to go to the toilet, but they've not. They've woken up because the body's recognized that blood sugar has dipped too low, and what it does is it releases cortisol to generate some glucose from the liver, as I said earlier. And of course, cortisol is our wake up hormone, and that can take an hour or two for that wake up hormone level to drop. So oftentimes if you're waking up having to go to the toilet, but then find that your brain's whizzing away and you can't get back to sleep, then oftentimes that's because your blood sugar isn't very well regulated. A really simple way to test this is to have a small protein snack before bed and see if you sleep better. That's obviously not the long-term solution, but if you do notice that you sleep for longer by having a protein snack before bed, then it can be really important to really look at what you're eating throughout the day. Start the day with a much more balanced breakfast and have a well-balanced lunch and well-balanced evening meal. And what you should find is that your sleep quality and quantity greatly improves. If you are having symptoms of a blood sugar regulation issue, then it is really important to have a chat with your GP and get a simple blood test. What we tend to look at is something called HbA1c, which is a measure of how much blood glucose is attached to your hemoglobin within the blood. And if that's creeping up, if it's up to about 42 or higher, then that's usually signs that your blood sugar regulation is going amiss. Now, that's a marker of the 3 months in the run-up to the test. So as you start to improve your diet, as you start to work on your blood sugar regulation more, you should see that within about 3 months. So it's often quite a good thing if you notice that your levels are going a little bit awry, to really look at your diet and lifestyle and have it retested 3 months later to see if it's moving in the right direction. But it is something as perimenopausal and menopausal females that we need to be acutely more aware of. What we tend to get away with when we're younger, we no longer get away with as we start to get older. So hopefully you found this video useful. I'll be doing lots more videos around general health and well-being, and I would love it if you would like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.